This week's episode of AEW Dynamite kicks off with SCU in tag team action against the Hybrid 2, and after 15 minutes, it's Frankie Kazarian that pins Jack Evans after a huge wave of the future. We get a segment rating of 52 for this tag team match. SCU preparing for their number one contendership ladder match against the Young Bucks in just a week's time at AEW Revolution. Great performance all around from both teams, and we did see the Young Bucks take on the Hybrid 2 not so long ago. You can see that Jack Evans and Helico want to keep them strong for this match. Definitely got plans for them going forwards as we roll into our next segment here. After the match, Jack Evans and Angelico decide to continue the fight with Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky. Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks, race to the ring and try to break it up. Then the Hybrid 2 attack Nick and Matt. The audacity, can you believe it? 4 against 2 pretty much here. Both SCU and the Young Bucks team up to take out the Hybrid 2. SCU hit their finishes on them first, then Matt and Nick follow up with their own. Whatever you can do, we can do better. After Hybrid 2 roll out the ring, SCU face off with the Young Bucks. There's an exchange of words. Things start to get heated after Nick and Matt point upwards where the number one contendership contract will dangle at Revolution. Nick and Matt shrug and then exit the ring. So a strong start to this week's episode of Dynamite. Still building towards that big ladder match at Revolution. I can't wait to see how good it's going to turn out. Then we roll into the commentary desk. Welcome one and all to this week's AEW Dynamite. We are just 1 week out from Revolution. One more Dynamite to go and things couldn't be any hotter. Tonight, our big main event sees the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley team up with Kenny Omega as they take on the World Tag Team Champions, the Lucha Brothers. And that's right, JR. And if I was Jon Moxley, I'd have eyes in the back of my head when it comes to Omega. He announced last week that he is putting his name in the hat, with his focus being on the AEW Championship now. And how can we forget the history those two have? Just look way back to Double or Nothing 2018. And no doubt, Adam Page will be present in some form tonight. Also, folks, tonight is the Inner Circle Town Hall meeting, not to be missed. Plus, can Britt Baker and Tony Storm keep their hands off one another before Revolution? Now let's take you to Jake the Snake and Lance Archer, the Murder Hawk Monster, who have been preparing for their match at Revolution inside of a steel cage against the Hardys. So we'll take a look at tonight's card then. So we've got a big tag team match. Shida and Statlander team up to take on the team of Britt Baker and Nyla Rose. We also have the Dark Order back in action after the sad news of Brody Lee against the Von Erichs. And also that Inner Circle Town Hall meeting. Bit of a take on what happened in real life. And also Darby Allin will face off against Matt Sydal. A match for the ages, I'm sure, and I hope it will be. And then we've got that big main event. Omega, Moxley teaming up to take on the World Tag Team Champions, the Lucha Brothers. Both Jake Roberts and Lance Archer are stood in a huge warehouse in the middle of the steel cage that will play host to Archer's match against both Hardys at Revolution. And Jake Roberts goes on to say, a solid steel cage. A place where careers have been shortened and ended. In just 1 week of Revolution, Lance here will step inside. He'll stand opposite the Hardys, a team that are notorious for this type of environment, and when the bell rings, there will be nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Matt, Jeff, your time is almost up. Make the most of life here in AEW. Hell, make the most of life whilst you still can, because once Lance is done with you, it ain't gonna be worth living for. Both Jake and Lance look around the huge steel structure. Lance grabs hold of a side panel and starts shaking it and screaming. He is ready to annihilate the Hardys in that 2-on-1 handicap match at Revolution. Then up next, we see Shinsuke Nakamura walking backstage, holding onto his back and abdomen, still feeling the effects of the steel chair shot from last week from Brody King. He seems disgruntled as he enters Tony Khan's office. The door is left ajar and Nakamura can be heard saying, "I'm not happy about last week. It is a shame what happened to Cody, and I wish to punish those responsible." And Khan is heard replying. And rightly so, Shinsuke. Now, we're not sure how long Cody is going to be out of action for, so you need to just be careful, okay? Now, I want to offer you a chance to take on Punk at Revolution, but unfortunately, you are yet to pick up your first win, but we can put that right. Next week, face Brody King again, beat him, and you get Punk at Revolution. Shinsuke Nakamura says, sounds good, and it will be done. Thank you. So, as we know, Shinsuke's debut was against Brody King. It ended in a draw. Shinsuke yet to get his first win. If he can beat Brody King this time around on the go-home show, then he's got Punk at Revolution. Up next in a bout that didn't have much heat in Temple Wrestling, Dr. Britt Baker and Nyla Rose defeated Shida and Chris Statlander in 11 minutes 32 when Nyla Rose submitted Statlander with a camel clutch. Got 29 for this match, which is a bit disappointing. Was kind of expecting it, and the match was poorly placed. Again, that's me anticipating that we're going to start the show with a really good rating, get the crowd buzzing. That just wasn't the case this week. Anyway, after the match, Nyla Rose is still stood over Statlander, who she just pinned to win the match. Well, should be submission, actually. It was a dominant performance from the native beast, and she stands up, she stares intently at Dr. Britt Baker, and can be heard saying, "You beat Storm at Revolution, I'll be waiting." She leaves the ring. As she walks up the ramp, she passes by the women's champion, Toni Storm, who has a protective mask on. She's making her way to the ring. Britt has a mic. "Toni, I know things have gotten heated lately between us two, and I know what Brandy said last week, that I touch you, the match doesn't go ahead. Obviously that works in your favour, but she can." She starts laughing as all of a sudden Nyla Rose attacks Storm from behind. After the attack, Nyla begins to back up the entranceway, with Britt eventually catching up and looking down at a hurting Toni Storm, saying, "See you at Revolution." So Britt Baker can't touch Toni Storm, but Nyla Rose can. Backstage, we then see Eddie Kingston, the Butcher and the Blade, stood together as Eddie Kingston says, "Where were you, Luchasaurus? Where were you last week when your boys were getting torn to shreds? Last week, these two showed a glimpse of what they are capable of. It was violent, it was nasty, and I liked it. We're not going to stop there, though. This is just the beginning for Butch and Blade. We're going full fucking heavy metal until we get what we deserve. Until we have those World Tag Team titles. We're going right to the top. You better believe it." All three then walk off. Well, was not expecting this. The Butcher and the Blade's performance with improvising obviously hindered that segment rate. And as we move into our next match of the evening, tag team action, the Dark Order defeating the Von Erichs in 11:52. It was Evil Uno that got the pin on Ross Von Erich with a reverse pile driver. It's a 51. Oh dear, the matches aren't looking too good at the moment. The United Quality did lift the match, and so did colour commentary as well, but apart from that, it's been a pretty average, or I should say below average show so far when it comes to match quality, and with the segment ratings. Not too happy about that. Well, after the match, both Evil Uno and Stu Grayson stand together and say, "We are one," pointing to the sky in memory of the late Brody Lee. As they both head up the rampway, they are met by Eric Redbeard, who nods at them in appreciation. They all walk to the back. So at this moment in time, I'm not too sure which direction to take the Dark Order in. In real life, you would expect them to all be turning face, but I kind of want to keep them heel. Now, do we go down the serious route, or do we carry on with the comedy sort of side of things? I'm not sure. I have to try and work that one out. As we move into our next segment, as Taz is seen walking backstage with Brian Cage, they both walk up to Miro and Kip Sabian and says, "Gents, I've just been told that next week's Dynamite, the go-home show, Cage here is to team up with you two in a huge 10-man tag team against Best Friends after what happened last week. I believe Janela is okay after Cage here accidentally knocked him down in the parking lot. I just want you to know, Team Taz, have your backs." Kip Sabian, "Thanks, we appreciate that. We'll see you next week." They all shake hands ahead of the huge 10-man tag. So we're going to have the Best Friends with Orange Cassidy teaming up with Janela and Warhorse, taking on Team Taz Kip and Miro ahead of that TNT Championship match at Revolution. In a decent match, Darby Allin defeats Matt Sydal in 9 minutes 26 after a coffin drop. Look at that performance, that ring performance from Darby Allin with a 71. I did set this to All Out. I wanted both performers to try and put on the best match that they could possibly do. And I think that's probably the best that we're going to get from this. A 65, the match got the crowd buzzing. That's the first time we've seen that so far with this show. Could you just imagine a match between Darby Allin and Matt Sydal? That would be fantastic to see in real life. And I know it sounds crazy at the moment, but I don't have too much for Darby Allin this side of Revolution, so we're just going to have to put him in a few random matches here and there. Anyway, up next, the Dynamite following Revolution will be titled Spring Stampede, which will feature the beginning of the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament. And the show will feature stars such as Kenny Omega, Pac, Jon Moxley, MJF, and Darby Allin. So that should be something cool to look forward to after AEW Revolution. The Inner Circle, Sammy Guevara, Jeff Cobb, Santana and Ortiz are sat at a round table awaiting the arrival of Chris Jericho, Le Champion, who eventually turns up and takes a seat. He starts by saying, "Gentlemen, thanks for coming. Tonight, we will go through everything with a fine comb. We will not leave a stone unturned. We will approach this like adults." Jeff Cobb: "Listen, Chris, I'm not sure what's going on here, but all Santana and Ortiz want is something to sink our teeth into. I know I turned up late to this Inner Circle party, but what happened to the group that took no shit from the likes of the Elite? You were the first ever AEW World Champion, Chris. What have you done since? Sammy, you're supposed to be one of the biggest upcoming stars in pro wrestling, yet you've done nothing." "Okay, thank you for being honest, Jeff. I think it's obvious this is what you're all thinking, and we need to put this right." So this town hall meeting will continue. The angle getting the crowd hot, that's really good to see. Let's see what else happens then with this Inner Circle town hall meeting as Jericho continues. So over the next few weeks, I'm setting a target for each of you. So Jeff, I want you to be an untouchable monster that people have to think twice about dealing with. Sammy, I want to challenge you. I want you to get your name into the AEW World Title Eliminator Tournament. And then you two, Santana, Ortiz. What would I do without you two? Pick on anyone. Beat them silly. Hell, I hear Nick and Matt are facing SCU at Revolution next week. Now, if none of this happens in the coming weeks, then I'll end the Inner Circle and we can all go our separate ways. How's that sound? Sammy Guevara, Santana and Ortiz look at one another. Jeff Cobb seems thoughtful and Jericho gets up and leaves. So Jeff Cobb thinking about this, he's thinking, well, he's just challenged Sammy to go in the World Title Eliminator Tournament, but what about me? Maybe Jeff Cobb wants to be in that Eliminator Tournament. Just going to have to wait and see where this goes with Cobb, Sammy, even Jericho. Looking at the ratings though for those two segments, I was hoping for a bit better, but this looks better. As Jon Moxley, and it's our first 71, as Jon Moxley makes his entrance through the crowd with his AEW Championship over his shoulder, he passes the three, Hangman Page, Dax and Cash, who raises a beer to him. The three at ringside for this main event. I'm hoping this main event match saves the show because so far it's been pretty lackluster when it comes to ratings. But 71 for this one, that's just because Mox and Hangman's in the segment. So then, our main event of the evening, Mox and Omega teaming up to take on the World Tag Team Champions, the Lucha Brothers. And in an exceptional match, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley defeated the World Tag Team Champions in 26 minutes when Omega pins Pentagon Jr. with a one-winged angel. Jon Moxley carried the match in terms of in-ring performance. So Mox, Omega working really well as a tag team, coexisting. This main event getting the crowd buzzing. It's come a little too late though, and we only got 71. I was expecting slightly more, maybe pushing towards the 80s, but a 71, it's not going to rescue the overall rating of the show, unfortunately, I don't think, because every other match has been pretty lackluster. But Omega, Mox, they benefit from having that groundswell of public support. And just imagine them two teaming up with the history that they have in, the short history of AEW. They've had quite rivalry, and we could be tapping into that very, very soon. So, after the match then, to end Dynamite, Hangman Page, Dax and Cash, the three, get up from the front row seat. Dax and Cash target Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, who they will face at Revolution for the World Tag Team Championships, dragging them under the bottom rope. Fists fly as the tired Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega watch on. They forgot about Page. Page is behind them on the ring apron. Now, I have forgot to put this in there, but what I was thinking was Page is taking aim at Kenny Omega. We remember the turn back at My Full Gear, and keeping in mind that promise that Page made to Moxley to keep him fresh ahead of the world title match at Revolution, well, that's not the case. As Page goes for his buckshot lariat, Kenny Omega disappears because Pac takes him from underneath the ring ropes, just like Dax and Cash did with the Lucha Brothers, and Page takes out Jon Moxley, almost taking his head off. Page can't believe it as he kneels next to Mox. He has gone against his words. And as you can see, it's just slightly out of order this, what Pac out of nowhere drags Kenny to the outside. The two then continue to brawl through the crowd and to backstage. Page and Mox are the only ones left in the ring. Page calls for the AEW title as he stands over Mox, holding it. Instead of placing it, he holds it up in the air with a smirk, then drops it as Dynamite comes to a chaotic end. So, Hangman Page gone against his word, and it was him that's took out Moxley, that's had their first physical interaction with just a week to go, just another Dynamite to go before their big main event at AEW Revolution. Now, I'm not expecting a high rating for this show. Oh, it's a 69. That's the lowest we've had. Isn't that unbelievable? That's the lowest rating we've had in this series so far. And we're on episode 27 when it comes to Dynamite. So that's not too bad, although the show has lost popularity in 14 regions. We need to really be picking up steam. I feel like we've done that with the stories told. It's just the ratings of the matches that's let us down. So this week, not the best in terms of overall rating, but I think with stories being told, I feel as though they're coming together just nicely, as we've got one more Dynamite to go, and I feel as though that's going to be a much better episode than this week's. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So this week we scored a show rating of 69. That's all we're bothering about at the moment, due to us being dropped by ITV4. I know I keep going on about it, but this week we didn't do too bad. I mean, on TNT we scored 825,000 viewers. That's round about the same sort of mark that AEW's getting in real life. Overall, we got 1.1 million viewers tuning in for this week's Dynamite. Well, let's go and see if NXT. I'm expecting NXT to beat its on-show rating this week, which will be the first time in this TEW 2020 series. Yeah, they've only just beaten us. Show rating of 70. Only just. It's not too bad then. Obviously, they had more viewers than us. They had the Rising Tides, Ciampa and Joaquin Wilde defeating Nightwatch, the team of Gargano and Kushida. But yeah, anyway, that is it for this episode of Dynamite. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Don't miss AEW Dark. That's the next episode. Then it's the go-home show for AEW Revolution. See you there.